Okay. Today let's see about config maps and secrets. So, what are config maps? So, in case if we are able, if we want to access any of the application, actually it will be secured and we will be requiring username passwords, right? So those things will be saved in the configuration called secret in Kubernetes. So it will be saved as secret, and then those informations like which are not more sensitive, those things can be configured as config maps. Okay, so what does config map is used to? It is used to store some non-sensitive configuration. For example, in case if we have some URLs of databases, those things can be saved as a config maps. Okay, so you can store these configuration files in YAML format or else in JSON format. So actually creating config maps, actually we can do it in two ways. Okay, one through configuration file and other through direct commands. Directly using kubectl we can just pass just like other applications, you can pass kubectl create, and then in case if you have to create config map, give config map, and then we have to give a name. Okay, and here they are mentioning from file, so those configurations has to be mentioned in config file.txt. So what this config file will have? So this config file here they are directly passing from file, right? And if you see here they have passed those things directly in the command itself. So from this is the key, okay? Key equal to key 1 and value equal to value 1, and then key 2 and value 2. So the same thing can be provided in config file.txt. So what you can create a text file and then you can pass it using from file, or else you can directly pass it while creating from literal, and then you can pass key value and key value. Okay, so in these two methods you can pass directly, and we have one more method like using this method, like you will be creating a YAML file. So as we told yesterday, so this API version kind metadata, these things are same. Here normally for deployments and secrets we will get spec. Okay, so instead of spec, we are passing in data, right? So we have to provide data. And then here key value, like whatever key value you want to give. Like for example, here you can give like database URL, okay? And then you can give HTTP 100.1.1.20. So like this, you can pass. By this, you will be giving this key as database URL, and then you will be giving the URL. Like key and value, you will be passing it like this. So using these three methods you will be passing in, and then we have so when you pass these config maps in parts, okay, when you define it in parts, so actually we will have API version, kind, metadata, spec. So these things are common, and under containers you will be passing the container name and image. Okay, so once that is done, you have to give these lines. Okay, environment from, and then config map reference, and then you have to give the name. Okay, like you have created these config maps, right? So you have created these config maps. So what is this config map name? It is my config. The name is my config, right? So you have created the config map, but you have to use that in pod, right? So you are passing it here. Okay, so here they have passed it as environment variable. Okay, you can pass it as volume as well. In case if you have to pass it as volume, you have to give it as volume mounts, and then you have to give the name, and then you have to give the path. Okay, like at what path this exact config map has to be mounted. Okay, so they will be mounting it as volume, and they are giving the name, like you can give whatever name you want here, but this config map name should be the name of this one. Okay, my config, and then this your, here you have defined as config map. So you're in volume mounts, you are giving the name as volume config volume, this name you are passing here, and then you are giving the path. So how is it? So what is the use of config map? So in case if we have to pass, we have two types of data. Okay, um, for example, let's take our credit card. Okay, in credit card what we will have? We will have the name. Okay, let's consider. John. Okay, and then we will have like some credit card number. We will have some credit card number. Okay, and then we will have CVV. Okay, this is also like a unique number, 3-digit unique number. Okay, here these two are sensitive, right? If we give it to someone, they may hack our credit card. But this one, it is not so sensitive. Now, what you can give, you can pass this John in config map. But this sensitive data is there, right? So this thing you have to pass it in secret. Okay. Now, how you can define this config map? So we can define this config map in key key value format. Okay, so what is key? So we have something called John. Okay, what is John? John is name. Okay, so the key is name. Okay, and then what is the value? Value is John. Okay, similarly we have some database. Okay, um, so for example we have some database, so we give it as database URL, and then you give the value like http, and then you give some data. Okay, similarly for example you will have like for example we have John, let's assume he is in his 10th class. Okay, so this you can pass it in config like class equal to 10th. So similarly, you can pass the config values like these are non-sensitive. Like you can easily tell in public, like what is the name John and database URL you can give. But here you given the database, right? If we share the username and password publicly, then someone can hack this one. So those things should be given in secrets, whereas the public information can be given in config maps. Okay. So here what they have done, they have created the config map. So they have given some key and then value. So once they created, so for example here, so they have created this one, they have given these configurations. Okay, and then they have created a config. Okay, they have created a config. So what is the name of this config? They have given the name of the config as my config. Okay, this is the name. Okay, they have given the config name as my config. Okay, so they have created this config my config, but it is created. How you can create? You have created the YAML file, and then when you do kubectl apply -f, and then when you give this config YAML file config.yaml, okay, then this config file will be created. So my config is created. What is the use of my config? It is created, but it is not used anywhere, right? So where we can use? We can use it in the pod. Okay. When we use it in the pod, so whenever there is a requirement like to access any of the databases, it will access the data from my config. So when what is the database URL? HTTP colon and something, right? So these information will be passed from my config to pod. Okay, so what happens here? Here they have created the config file, and then they have done kubectl apply, and then they have created the config map. Then they have to use it, right? So they are using it in the pod. So as we have discussed in the previous class, so we will be defining the API version, kind, metadata, and spec. And as it is pod, it will have container. Okay, so and now we have to pass this created config map, right? So how we pass? We have two methods. Okay, one using environment form. Okay, and then config map reference, and then you have to pass the name. Okay, name how you get? You get it from my config, or else you can pass it as volume. So when you create volume, first you have to create the volume, this one. Okay, and then name, you can give whatever name you want. Okay, and then we have created the config map, right? So and then we have to pass the name. The name is my config. Where we got it from here. Okay, and then we have to attach that one to container. How we can attach? Volume mount. Okay, and then name, this name. Okay, and then path, this one. So if you want to use it in your environment, you can use Kubernetes config map. Okay, so you will get this one. Just click on this one. So if you come down, they have given the examples. Okay, in case if you see here, they have given us environment, and then they have given a name, value from config map reference, and then they have given name key. Okay, similarly you come down, if you see here, they have given the volumes. Okay, so first you create the volume, name is foo, and config map and name of the config map. So again they create volume mount. In volume mount they give the name of foo. Okay, and then they give the mount path. So similarly, we will have different methods. If you see here, they have one more method like environment from. Here they are using environment variable. Environment from config map name. So these things like no need of memorizing. You can get it from this documentation. Just when you create the config map, that config map name should be given here. Okay, that's it. So why we use config map? Config map is used for storing the non-sensitive data. Okay, and then we have something called secrets. Okay, so as we seen here, so we have this credit card number and then CVV. So these are security, like it's very confidential, right? So it is so sensitive. So we have to create it as a secret so that third party or any other members, they shouldn't be able to see these secrets. Okay, so this can be created using secrets. Okay, so store sensitive data like database credentials, API keys, certificates, etc. Okay. Avoid hard coding sensitive information. Like we shouldn't mention these configurations inside any deployment YAML or some other files. Okay. So you have to create a secret. So how we can create secret? We have multiple methods. Okay. So one of the method is directly through kubectl. Okay. kubectl create secret, and then you have to give it as generic, and then you have to give the name. Okay. And then you can pass from literal. Okay, and then username, what is username? Admin. And from literal password. So they have given the password as secret pass. You can pass it like this, or else you can create, you can use a some secret values like id rsa pub, and then you can pass it as from file. Okay, previously from file we have passed it as .txt, right? Here we are passing it as uh, pub file. Okay, or else you can use yaml method, API version, kind, metadata, and then type is opaque. It should be opaque, and then data. So here data they are giving username, password, and then these things should be like base64 encrypted. Okay, in case for example we have admin, let me copy this one. Uh, base64 encode. Okay, you come and paste it here. Okay, now encode. So okay, let's select decode. So if you see here, it is admin. Okay, but they have passed it like this, right? Why? By you have to pass it like this so that end users, they will not know like what is the username. And then if you come here, they have given the password like this, right? So if we decode this one, what will be the password? Password will be this one, secret pass. Let's try this one. Decode. If you see here, secret pass. So what they have done, they have encoded this one. So for example, um, encode. So I will give my name. Okay, I'll give my name, and then I will encode this one. So if I encode this one, I'll get this one. Okay, just copy this one and then paste it here, and then I will just do decode. If you see here, I'm getting my name. Similarly, when you pass in secrets, it should be like base64 format. Okay, so you can create a pod, and then under spec containers you can give environment from. Okay, similar to the config map, you can pass in this one as environment variable and can give the name of the secret. So what is the name of the secret? It is my secret. Okay, so similarly you can pass it. So what happens, for example, you have a docker image and you are trying to access that, you are trying to pull the image. Okay, in case if you don't have the credentials to access it from this machine, then obviously it will fail. Okay, like it will not be able to log in to that docker, and it will not be able to pull the image. So you have to use these secrets to pull those images or to authenticate the applications, to whatever thing you have to do, you have to do using these secrets. Okay, and then you can now attach it as volumes as well. Okay, Um,